Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to give me my $40 or do you not?
I'd be glad to give you $40. You've
Okay.
never asked me directly for $40, Phil. All you've done is
I've sent you multiple emails. I've shown it on video.
You've never sent me.
Do you want to send me? Do you want to give me my $40 in my hand, or do we want to walk off? Because I do not have time for your bullshit.
Philip.
You can give me $40 now and shut me up, or I can walk off because I have things that I need to do.
bclaymore@gmail.com. I've asked you many times.
I've sent it to you on Patreon multiple times. I don't know your Gmail.
bclaymore@gmail.com.
I've sent it to your Kickstarter. I've sent it to your Kickstarter multiple times, multiple messages.
Let me ask you this, Philip. Is that a reason to just attack me out of the blue?
Attack for you for what?
That you made up?
What did I make up?
Really? Your very first video about me was completely invented, and you know that.
Which one?
I had no idea that you were this crazy SJW.
State something that you just engaged me.
So you can put it on your video. That's right. I want to have a conversation with you because you're not man enough.
I just want my $40. I have things to do. Are you going to give me my $40 now?
Let me ask you a question.
Are you going to give me my $40 that you owe me now, or should I just walk off?
Let me ask you a question.
Okay, then I'll just walk off.
Philip, I'd like to talk to you.
I don't want to talk to you unless you have $40. Okay, I'm going to...
I don't have time for all of Cider's intros today. We have comic books to discuss. It's very important stuff, guys. Comics matter, as you know, because there's a channel called Comics Matter. It's not with this guy. It's with your boy, Zach. But this guy's called Comics Artist Pro Secrets right here. Ethan Van Sciver, welcome to the channel for the first time.
Yeah. What a pleasure. How great to be. I rushed home. I was packing boxes, and I said, I got to be home by 3. So awesome. I'm here. We're sporting my Comicsgate hoodie. Look at my beautiful camo Comicsgate hoodie. Isn't that great?
Are those for sale anywhere?
Well, they were available only for my YouTube channel subscribers. The back of the hoodie is something else. The back of the hoodie says, "Comic pros hate you," and fight back. I think it says. I can't remember, but comic pros hate you. Yeah,
they do. Well, they hate me, I guess, right now. I'm the flavor of the week, it seems like. But they literally. But the reason they hate me, let's be honest, is because of you. Why?
What'd I do?
I don't know. That's what we're going to find out right now, because you've been in the comic industry since the 90s, and there's been a lot of changes through here over this entire time. And yet, it seems like it just keeps getting worse and worse. They keep doing the same things over and over again. I know you tried to warn them multiple times. And they didn't listen to you. Maybe they'll listen to Gail Simone saying the exact same things you said 5 years ago.
What did Gail say 5 years ago?
No, Gail said today about the same thing. I made a video about it. And maybe once we get to the current state of comics, we can get to that. But they still have their same little cliques. They're still trying to blacklist people. It's very weird. Was this the environment in the 90s when you started with Cyberfrog, as a teenager? Did comics have this kind of what do you want to call this, catty high school attitude to it, where it's just people scared for their careers constantly, and or was it a different vibe back then?
No, I think it was more like I think it was more for guys. I think it was more like I mean, when you look at like Billy Tucci and you look at like the kind of environment that Rob Liefeld, Dan Fraga, these guys foster now, or they would unhindered. Like, that's what comics were like. It was just guys fucking having a good time and like making a lot of money, going to big conventions, buying expensive cars, doing promo shoots for Wizard magazine, signing comics for enormous lines of like anxious fans. I remember Chaos Comics, especially Brian Pulido, just like having it down, like really just making everybody excited about Lady Death and Evil Ernie. They'd have a line that was roped off, like what are those called? Those ropes with the posts. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
They'd have that.
I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, they'd have
Wow.
that in front of their booth, and they'd have like sirens going off, where they'd be like, "In 5 minutes, we will be offering the limited gold Evil Ernie variant. Only 150 are available. They will be $2,000 each. Sold out instantly. Woo, woo, woo. Everybody cheering. Crazy, absolutely crazy. People making money hand over fist. Everybody excited. The parties after hours were huge. They were enormous, and there were women, I guess, but they were booth babes. Like,
Yeah.
like you know, it was like if you wanted a ladies, you want a job in comics. How do you look in a bikini? You can stand by my booth dressed as my character and basically encourage simps to come over and check out my comics. That's where women were in comics in the 90s. It was a better time.
Interesting stuff right there.
Sense.
And I guess we switched from that to this being what the mainstream promotes right here. Everything is fine now.
What is that?
This is Alex DeCampi. I mean, they've nominated this person for multiple awards of all sorts of color, of all sorts of stripes and colors, as you can see, and this is what they want, I guess. But none of it looks fun, and so I guess the crux of the thing is, as an entertainment industry, is why aren't people having fun anymore?
Can't she fit in the bikini? Like, what is she doing? She's doing. What is she doing comics for? She's supposed to dress like Vampirella and stand in front of the booth, or Lady Death or something. What is going on?
You'd think that'd be the case, but that's odd. So you started with Cyberfrog as a young lad, and now is that something you just were coming up with and screwing around with in high school, and was like, or were you interested in doing a science fiction story? Were you like looking at what the Turtles were crushing it as and being like, I kind of want to do something like that? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. Like, you know, I thought I was like, I'm going to go and be John Byrne one day. One day I'm going to try not to be bald, fat, bearded, glasses, like every other comic pro that I see.
So you did it without the glasses.
Yeah. I managed to keep the glasses off. But I said, I'm gonna draw for comic books. I'm gonna be like John Byrne one day. How do I get started? My whole thing was I just needed to come up with my own comic book character so that I could learn to draw pages. You know, I drew comics as a kid. I mean, I drew comics making fun of the school teachers, and I'd photocopy them, bring them in, hand them out. People liked them. You know,
I did that too, incidentally.
Yeah, that's just something that. I think, and I'd get stuff in the school paper. You know, they publish me in the school paper. I'd basically be calling the German teacher a homosexual, and you know, things like that. They publish it. That people just like my political commentary about school. But I'd never really drawn like a serious comic book before. But at the same time, like I knew I was going to. My high school was really competitive with artists. A lot of like really talented guys. There was a zine that they did where they would draw these kind of comic book strips, and it was called If When Studios, like if/when. In other words, maybe someday, like, you know, we'll. And I always thought that was so defeatist and gay. Like I didn't want to be a part of it because I was just like, no, I'm going to do this. It's not a dream. We're going to make it happen. We're going to work in comic books. So I thought they were gay, and they still do. Those guys still do want to work in comics when they're like 50 years old. They haven't done it yet. It's like, yeah, exactly. Like if, when, never. It's not going to happen. You didn't make it happen. But anyway, I've told this story before. I was illustrating some children's books for a very strange man named Tom Neely, who called himself Mr. Tom. I think he's a suspicious fellow, sauce fellow.
Oh boy!
But he put on puppet shows for kids, and he had the scripts for the puppet shows, and he would pay me $500 to turn the puppet shows into children's books, like the puppet show scripts. $500 was a lot. That's great. And I was working on those, and I just said, this isn't going to last forever. I better actually do a comic book. And this girl, this Puerto Rican girl, gave me a little statue of a frog. And I just took the face of the frog and gave it a robot body and called it Cyberfrog, and that's basically where he came from. I just started drawing pages. Yeah.
And you hooked up with Harris Comics on that. Did you self-publish anything first, or did they kind of just see things, be like, we're looking for talent? How did all that come to be?
Oh, so I did about 5 issues worth of Cyberfrog work by myself that I self-published at Kinko's, and just, again, handed off to friends who also wanted to work in comics. This is my Cyberfrog comic. All that stuff's been reprinted now in Warts and All's Frogapalooza zine. So you can go take a look at that, early stuff if you want to.
So Warts and All is different than the hardcover. I forget the title of it. I've got it.
Unforgettable Tales or
Unforgettable Tales. So the Unforgettable Tales is the Harris stuff, and this is like very beginning. No,
it's different. Okay, so what happened was I drew about 5 issues worth of stuff on typing paper, on photocopy paper, and I, was just learning how to draw pages and panels. Put all that stuff aside, and then I sent a submission to a company called Hall of Heroes in Indiana. And because they just looked so basic, they looked so entry level. They were working with teenagers, and I was 19 years old. They would brag. This guy, Matt Martin, who you now know for Snowman, is like a 17-year-old wonderkind. Like, he's a Christian, and he's doing his Christian version of Spawn, and he's 17, and it's amazing. And then there's Trent Kanuga, he's 15, and he's doing Deadbolt. I said, that's the company I want to work at. I want to work with these guys because it just seems like there's enthusiasm. They want to go somewhere, and it'd be a good place to just get published. So I did 2 issues with them, and those, by the way, that's Unforgettable Tales, colored, relettered. Warts and All has that stuff in it, but Warts and All is the Harris Comics stuff. So I took those books that I did for Hall of Heroes to Philadelphia Comic-Con back in 1994, and passed them around. Paul Ryan was there. I talked to him. He was the first professional that I ever really spoke to.
I loved his work, especially on the what was that short-lived cosmic series that he did in the early 90s? Quasar.
Oh, Quasar,
yeah, he did great work on that.
He was doing Fantastic Four at the time. He followed up for John Byrne, so he had a long run on Fantastic Four after John Byrne's run was over.
Was that when DeFalco was writing? Paul Ryan? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I love DeFalco stuff too. Oh, cool. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I talked to him for a long time, and he actually did a Cyberfrog drawing for me. I wish I had it because he's passed on now. Wow. I don't know where it went, but it's gone now. And I went to the Harris Comics booth because they were at the show. They had a big booth presence, and everybody knew who they were. And they were New Yorkers. So I went over to them, and I just kind of said, "Here's my book, Cyberfrog, and what do you think?" And I had my phone number in there and everything like that. Well, it turns out editorial called me because one of the guys who was inking Shadowhawk Vampirella, which was their big crossover book, they had a lot of money invested in that. They were going to sell a lot of copies. It was an Image crossover with Harris. He got arrested for they were like, he was arrested for drug possession and he can't finish the book. I think that's what it was. It was really weird. And they said
it was just drug possession because you never know what they're going to get arrested for, these people. So
not now these days, these days it's drugs are like they just said if you do can you do 20 pages and get them done in a week, like ink them? And they said, well, we'll pay you $200 a page. And I just went, that was unheard of money. It was just crazy. I said, I don't know if I can or not, but I will. I will. Yeah. I'm definitely going to get it done. Yeah, of course. So I banged them out. They were horrible. It's the worst ink job I think this dude had ever had. And they still were looking at Cyberfrog. They decided that they wanted to publish Cyberfrog because the publisher, who was, I think he was a mobbed up Jewish guy. They were scary people at Harris Publications. They were doing all kinds of magazines and stuff. The comics were just one wing, but the comics were profitable for them. And they said, we're doing all this like Pantha, Vampirella. We got to get some more like stuff, more like what Image is doing. and they knew of me, my book Cyberfrog, so they brought me in, and I had to sit down with these like 3 suited like Jewish guys who wanted to pretend they were Italian. You know these guys. You know,
Yes.
they're like New Yorkers. They want to come across as culturally Italian, but I'm like, you're Jews. I can tell because your last name has Stein at the end of it.
Not a Yamaha.
Yeah,
Not
that's
Yamaha.
so. But I mean, they were like they were trying to look really scary and stuff. But anyway, yeah, we did. They took on Cyberfrog and immediately got a toy deal and a TV show deal, and everything was great.
That's great. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, eventually, Cyberfrog and all that parlayed you into, I guess, were you hired for Impulse at DC? Is that the first spot you went in to do work there?
Yeah, I feel like, you know, that looked like a weak entry point for me. That just seemed like, you know, when you're trying to break in to any company in comics, you should scout around a little bit and be aware of editors and what they're editing and keep your ear to the ground if you can and know what might be coming up. I'm
working on that with IDW. I've been talking with this girl Heather quite a bit, and I'm trying. So we'll see how it goes.
You should take her job. Did you see your boy Zach? She was just like, I think she commented on this whole thing that you did. Like, imagine being upset about fascist being excluded from comics. And Zach said, imagine being delisted from the New York Stock Exchange.
Right.
I was like, God damn. Woo! We need Zach back. No, it's just awesome.
I know.
Yeah, you should scout around though. And I knew Humberto Ramos. Impulse was a big deal. Impulse was a really big book in like 97, 98. But
it was
I knew
outside of Batman, it was the only DC book I bought. I got it. I started getting at it. Yeah, I loved it. So I got it out of Zero Hour. And it just had a freshness to it that like the character of Bart Allen, just like he was an obnoxious little punk and unabashed about it, and he just had an energy that was just super high energy, and I loved it as a teenager.
He was naive and innocent, like he had big eyes, and he like was called, he was like a hurricane, the kind of like a puppy who wasn't aware of, like a puppy will bite you and doesn't know how sharp its teeth are and everything like that, and will hurt you. That was kind of like the Impulse character to me. Like he wasn't quite aware of the trouble that he was causing. And I thought it was a pretty good concept, and it was easy to draw because it was very cartoony. And I was just coming off of Cyberfrog. People knew who I was from Cyberfrog. I got to go to all the conventions with Harris Comics. I got to go to all the Big Image parties at San Diego Comic-Con because I was with Harris Comics. Went to a big Jim Lee party. He had like a hotel room with 3 floors. Man, dude, the money, the alcohol, the drugs, like unbelievable. It was so great. It was just so great. There was like a time when comics weren't depressed. You know, it was just, it was a real industry. And these industry events were like Wolf of Wall Street. It was fun. But it's so sad now. I went to the very last Marvel Comics Christmas party. That's where I met Billy Tucci in December of '94, and it was extraordinary. I still think about that. And it was closing. It was like the lamest Marvel Comics Christmas party. They had a free sushi bar, massive sushi tables everywhere, lobster, all this free food, with gigantic melting ice sculptures of the Thing and Daredevil and Spider-Man, like just, you know, right. All the arcades, big, massive posters of like standees.
Tucci loves talking about the ice sculptures. That's like one of his favorite things to talk about.
Where like we both were like, well, this is great. And immediately it died. Like immediately, like next year, like there were nowhere. That was the last Christmas party. And people started like tightening their belts a little bit. But man, we missed.
That's where Marvel really had its first implosion, because and this was there's been multiple implosions over the years, but this is the one that really took the comic industry in this era from selling millions on books to selling thousands on books. And around this time, Marvel decided to take distribution into their own hands. And Tom,
that was a little later. That was 4 years.
It was a couple years later.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Oh,
everybody was panicking.
We just started Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you were around at that point, and comic shops were panicking because Marvel's effed up all the distribution. They turns out they had no idea what they were doing, and they almost sank the entire comic book industry just by screwing around with like things that they shouldn't have been screwing around with. And so you over at Harris DC, did that impact you at all? Like, I mean, was that like, oh, Marvel's going to screw my paycheck and I'm not even working for them? Were you thinking stuff like that?
There was a lot of talk. I was at Harris when this happened. I remember like everybody reading the trade zine about it and saying Marvel's bought Heroes distribution. It is like absolutely catastrophic for the industry, and we're going to be lucky if we're still here in a year. And in fact, they like Harris closed shop a couple of years later. Like everybody was extremely panicked about that, and I remember Marvel just sinking. And they kind of they threw out this desperate lifeline, which was actually really kind of cool. Marvel reached out to Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti, who were doing great on their own with Event Comics. They had their own thing, and they just kind of said, "Why don't you come over here and do whatever you want?" The Heroes Reborn thing worked with Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld. So, how about if you have this thing called Marvel Knights? We'll give you 6 books, whatever you want to do. And that was the beginning of the kind of turnaround for Marvel Comics from that. And it always happens creatively. It has to be creative, when these companies kind of change their ways and start to do better. But I just remember that. I remember Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti, who didn't need to do it. And I remember the attitude was kind of like, well, it'll be fun. Let's just do it. It's going to be fun. Why wouldn't we go over to Marvel and mess around with their stuff? We're making millions on Ash and Painkiller Jane and all these other books that we've created, but let's fuck around with Marvel. They called me up. So I had just kind of Cyberfrog kind of came to an end at Harris Comics because the toy deal collapsed. And because the toy deal collapsed, the guys who were running Harris Publications just said, what are we doing with you now? Like, we got to go through this again and find a new, doesn't seem likely that we're going to be able to rebuild this thing. So you want to hang out, we'll pay you a third of what we were paying you before. I couldn't live on that. So I started to look around, and I remember Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti called me up because I was on the East Coast. And I was, I guess there's kind of the New York crew and the West Coast crew. And he said, we're doing this Marvel Knights thing, and we'd like to invite you to be a part of it. Like, if you could do anything for Marvel, like any obscure thing, not Spider-Man, none of the big books, but you like any obscure Marvel characters? And I actually said, yeah, I like Power Pack. I think I could do something cool with Power Pack, because I was already on my way to working on Impulse. So I was like, if I'm not going to do, I'm already programming myself to draw a book about kids. So maybe I'll do Power Pack instead and just take what I'm doing there and do it for you. And Joe Quesada was just kind of like, Power Pack, the fuck? He said, well,
this is an odd one.
Yeah, like he was shocked by that. I don't know what he thought I wanted to do. I really didn't have any preconceived ideas about anything, but he said, okay. Well, the other thing is, since you're doing Impulse, Marvel wants us to create a junior version of one of their characters, and do a book about it. Brand new character that's a junior version, kind of like Impulse is a junior version of Flash. That was all the rage. So we have a few ideas. And I remember he did say the Silver Snowboarder. He did offer me something called Daredevil Jr., Spidey. Some of the names he kind of threw out.
Oh, the Silver Snowboarder would have been a huge mistake. Oh my gosh!
All of it would have been really, really. It's just terrible.
Well, they're doing Spider Boy now with Dan Slott. I mean, it's going to be a huge mistake too. I think. So
you think it looks interesting? Yeah. I don't know. There's too many spiders out there right now.
There's way too many spiders out there.
You can't dilute the brand. But I came back. I offered them like Wolverine's daughter, a character called Lynx or X-32, and they loved it, and they took it. And they made X-23, and that's literally Wolverine's daughter right now. I would love. Wait a
minute. You pitched a Wolverine daughter, and called her X-32, and they made X-23. Did they pay you for this idea? Did it?
No.
It just
no. And I would love someone to ask Joe Quesada about it. Like I've told this story a bunch of times, and I'm waiting for Joe or Jimmy to deny it. They both know it's true. And
I'm gonna have to inject some energy into this right now. Ethan Van Sciver alleges that Joe Quesada is a thief, stealing X-23 for his NYX series and eventually series. What do you have to say, Joe Quesada? You better answer for this.
I just always felt like, that idea was in the air. Like anybody could have come up with it eventually, but
right. Yeah.
A little girl Wolverine. I got to use it before anyone, so I do kind of have some proof. They said they wanted me to do this book called Marvel Knights Remnants or something like this, and they said, why don't you throw your Wolverine girl in there? And I did. So that was in 2000, which predates their version of the character by like 3 years. So at least I have some evidence of that. But it was I decided just to go over to DC. Marvel always had a really creepy.
You didn't go all the way to DC. We got a couple questions, and I'll get to the super chats as they kind of like are relevant in the timeline here. Jay Bama fan for $2 says more stories of EVS being groomed, please. That's I guess with the creepy guy who wanted you to do puppet books. Was that Bats though? It gets to the next part here for $2. Ethan, how did you get the X-Men gig? And this came pretty shortly after this with Grant Morrison, right? I mean, it wasn't.
It was Grant Morrison. Yeah. That was awful. That was just it was a creepy thing. That was like right after 9/11 happened. I was working on Flash Iron Heights with Jeff Johns when the towers fell. And I just thought we were getting a lot of positive. People were talking about Flash Iron Heights, even though it didn't sell very well. But it was the talk of the office. Like, wow, this is really great. So Jeff and I took those pages. I sent them over. I faxed them over to an editor at Marvel Comics and said, we're just looking around. I don't know if you've got anything. And they came back and just offered me the fill-in gig on New X-Men. And it was awful. It was kind of like, I knew it was coming out. I was excited about it. I was a fan of Frank Whiteley's from The Authority. I thought he was amazing. And Grant Morrison, obviously, I liked him a lot. I read Kill Your Boyfriend way back when, and I just started following his career as well. So I thought, I was like, this is too big of a job for me, really. I'm still kind of wet behind the ears. But they said, look, you're not going to have to do much. Like, they said, Frank Whiteley, he's like, they say, how many books can you do a year? And I said, 6, maybe 6 a year. They said, well, Frank Whiteley can do 10. So you just have to do 2 for him, and then you can do a 4-issue miniseries, whatever you want to do. I said 2. All right, yeah, 2. I'll go unnoticed. It's just 2 issues a year. Nobody's going to get mad at me. They came back to me a little while later. I got the first script, New X-Men 117. I'm working on it, and it's hard. It's hard work. Grant Morrison's scripts are intense. And they said, hey, listen, it's going to be more like 4 a year, just based on the pace that Frank Whiteley's working at.
I have altered the deal. Pray I do not alter it further.
I was like, 4. Okay, so what am I going to do? The other 2? I'll find something to do with the other 2 issues I can do. And then it was, you're going to need to do 8 issues a year. And I said, that's not within my capabilities. But I'd already signed a contract with them. I was already doing New X-Men. And so they couldn't like remove me from it and put someone else there. So they had to hire a 3rd fill-in artist. And then the thing just became the famous clusterfuck that it is right now. And Grant would be piling up scripts. And he started writing them for me too. Like he'd be like, well, this one's for Ethan. And so he'd be like, hey, Ethan, blah, 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 do this, do that. And those scripts, I wanted to draw those, but I couldn't because I was, I bottlenecked over here. So those would get sent to a guy named Igor. I can't remember, dude. But this guy, Igor, was different than me. It's like, how many issues can you do a year? He's like 36. He's like, I'll do 48 if you want me to. And people kind of, his work was sloppy. It was rushed and ugly. And the characters oftentimes were really hideous. Storytelling was okay. And people would sort of blame me and blame Frank Whiteley as though we were forcing this poor guy, this poor, where was he from? Like Slovakia or something. This poor guy had to rush to get his books out. Bullshit. Like he had plenty of time to slow down, plenty of time. He wanted to do this. He wanted to do Cable. He wanted to do Soldier X. He was working on 3 books at once and banging out this very important, like Grant Morrison X-Men series, banging it out as though it were just kind of a side job.
Right.
Yeah, that kind of became sort of legendary. I did say at one point, like, you know, stop saying that, like, we're the cause of this. It's like, could slow down. He's got plenty.
I mean, the internet was kind of were you on any of those like Usenet message boards where they were bitching about comics and seeing this stuff at the time?
I was on Miller World. I was on Jinx World. You know, I was on those, those boards. Yeah. And then they would sit there and complain. Cameron Stewart. I remember him. Remember Cameron Stewart? He was,
recently... he got canceled a couple years ago for like flirting with a lady or something, at a convention. And then they all disavowed and fired him. And then he just kind of retreated out of comics and like hid rather than just saying, you know what, screw you guys. Which is too bad. And I always tell people, like, when you get canceled like this, you got 2 choices. You can curl up and die, or you can fight. And I like Ethan here because he's a fighter, and he's won the game because he decided to fight against these assholes at the end of the day, which we'll get to at some point.
Wasn't the woman 15 years old though, or am I misremembering that?
Was she? If that's the case, then I disavow. I don't
know how much fighting I want to do.
No, I don't want to fight for that.
Look her up. Yeah, I don't know. Look up that whole situation. I don't recall, but I remember being like, he had like, I remember him. He wanted my job so bad. He wanted to, be drawing X-Men.
All right, we got a CBR article, and they wouldn't lie about something like this. They're
CBR.
No. Will no longer be planned after sexual misconduct. His art's good.
Yeah.
Oh, grooming under it. Yeah, I disavow. Yeah, never mind. Yeah, I'm not good with that.
Sorry, allegedly, we want to say allegedly.
Yeah, that's a good point. This is also a good point. Let me go back to that article. Hold on. What is it? What does that mean?
I don't know.
Bleeding Cool. They'll be more salacious about it, won't they? Bleeding Cool than CBR. Yes, Rich Johnston. It's not uncommon for someone to accuse someone else of misconduct in recent years. We don't repeat in accusations on Bleeding Cool without explicit agreement of those. Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
Bleeding Cool. Yeah, right. Yesterday, several claims of misconduct and grooming were made against several comic creators. They kicked off with Cameron Stewart, several people involving predator of women much younger than him, and abusing his position of a well-known, admired comic book creator to vulnerable people. See, this is like, what does this even mean?
Yeah. Doesn't mean much. Yeah.
Writer and columnist Evelyn Hollow, she wrote a series of notes over 2 tweets saying, just remember the time I opened up to him about a failed suicide attempt, and he told me, well, if it didn't work, why didn't you immediately try again?
See, that's a good attitude about most things. Like, that's
right.
You want to do that.
Yeah, positive
about comics. Like, if it didn't work the first time, try again. Like, I'd say that to Liam Gray. Like, if it didn't work the first time, try again. But I'd mean it about comic books. Like, this book didn't get funded. Go try again with Dino King. It's a bad thing when it's about this.
Yeah, that's true. Nice. So not nice. I mean, he should have told her to keep herself safe. Probably.
Yeah. Keep yourself safe.
So, and I thought it was insensitive now. And so here's what she says. Basically groomed me from an age of 17, started a sexual. So Cameron Stewart, like hooked up with a girl at 18. And at 22, she was getting on his nerves and talking about suicide to him. And he was like, buzz off. So it doesn't look like he did anything. This looks like woman regret lying to me. It smells of it, right?
I don't trust women ever,
yeah.
I don't.
Let alone writers and columnists, women.
Right. The allegations from several people involved that of being a predator of women much younger than him.
But this is the
how
only
much
one.
younger? We see
Right.
17, okay, in your 30s.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's weird.
It is weird.
Yeah.
But I
So,
mean,
yeah.
you know, listen, the thing about abusing your power, the fuck are you talking about?
What's
The
that
whole
even mean?
the reason men become powerful is for sex. Women don't like that reality, but like the whole reason you might like if you find women who read comic books or they're cosplayers or whatever to be extremely attractive, one of your motivations for becoming famous and powerful in the comic book industry is to F them. As many of them as you can.
Like Warren Ellis in the Suicide Girls thing, right? Yeah.
Break it down. I mean, that makes complete and total sense. Like Warren Ellis found those women attractive, so he became a powerful wizard and hypnotist.
and messaged them on the internet, and then they regretted it years later. I guess.
I find nothing wrong with anything Warren Ellis did. Now, I don't know
either.
about Cameron Stewart.
Well, I
see the
do
underage
because
thing.
I should preface this. I do because fornication is a sin, and we don't condone that here on the Dankstream as a Christian channel. But I understand how some people might not.
I just remember being on the Miller World boards, and Cameron Stewart had his own board there, and he was showing a comic book that he bought, and it was called 15 Love, and it was about a teenage tennis
oh no
girl, and she was bent over with her mini skirt.
Are you for real?
I'm for
You're not
real.
joking.
I'm not joking. And he went, yeah, 15. I was like, that's fucked up, dude. Like that's
but I don't like this.
15 Love. That's tennis terminology, right? But it could also
it is tennis
mean
terminology. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gross.
I had weird thoughts about Cameron then. I was like, what is this industry harbor, man?
Oh God. So you did X-Men. Grant Morrison eventually got off of X-Men, and I heard they were talking about bringing in a famous Australian ghostwriter to write X-Men for you to draw. One who really has more talent than almost anybody else in the industry. It almost happened, but you could have worked with the great Liam Gray, but unfortunately it just didn't materialize. What do you remember of that at the time?
Well, I don't remember much because it didn't happen, and it's not based in the reality that I experienced day to day. I did hear about that, but it likely occurred only in one chubby Australian's imagination, and that's good. I mean, you need an imagination to work in this business.
Definitely. Yeah. And so after this, you went back to DC Comics. So did you have a falling out with Marvel over this whole X-Men rotating artist situation, and like that was kind of the end of that? Like, did Joe Quesada, was he friendly with you at this point? Because he eventually became this a-hole online, trying to cancel you and stuff. Like, how did that relationship progress?
Well, it was really uncomfortable. I accepted the job on New X-Men, and I couldn't believe that the job was being offered to me. I really didn't deserve it. You know, I knew that. I was a guy who had done about 12 issues of Impulse, Cyberfrog before that, and then I just had a critical success with Flash Iron Heights, where I got to draw in a more dark and realistic style. But it was still, I was still a very fragile artist in terms of, being able to handle important stories like that. I think my X-Men books are pretty good. But at the same time, I was working on New X-Men 117. I was used to my editors not lying to me. DC editors don't lie. They tell you the truth, and at least they did from my experience, and would sometimes hurt your feelings. Like when Jamal Igle wanted to work on bigger books, and they told him, you're like a street level artist. You're not like somebody who we're going to put on big. Like, that's a hard truth for Jamal.
Is that why he's mad at Dan DiDio right now and working his tail off to cancel him for all eternity? You
could
think?
Be, yeah. Yeah, it could be. Because, I mean, it's like, no, I should be doing something more like along the lines of what Phil Jimenez gets to do. It's like, no, you're like street level. We give you the D-list books, and you fuck those up. So I think that's the kind of honesty that I want to hear from my editors, because it hurts your feelings, but at least it's helpful. And Marvel Comics, they were really strange. I would turn in pages for this huge book, New X-Men 117. They would send me over what Frank Quitely, Vince Deegan, was doing. And I would turn in my stuff and I'd say, is Grant okay with this? Like, I haven't heard any feedback from him. I don't know, like, what does he think? Like, what? And Grant wanted to be separate from us. He didn't want to talk to me. He didn't want to talk to Igor, any of the artists. And the editors were lying to me. They were just saying, oh, he loves what you're doing. Let me tell you something, Ethan. They would even exaggerate and expound upon their lies. They would become colorful.
So you really didn't even interact with Grant Morrison. I mean, you said he was writing scripts specifically for you, so he was obviously thinking of your art, but
later.
You tried not to. Okay, later.
Not at first. What happened was I was like, so he's happy. And they'd say, oh, Ethan, Grant Morrison has said to us that he's worked with a lot of fill-in artists, but like he really likes you and you're, so I'm like, okay, a note would be nice or some help. Anyway, I'm living up in upstate New York and I'm going to drive down to Virginia Beach for the weekend. I'm going to take a vacation with my family. And they go, well, on your way down, you want to stop in the office and we'll take you out to lunch. We'd love to talk to you. You want to do that? And I said, okay, all right. So I met Mark Powers. I met his editor. I think Mike Rach was the editor, his assistant editor's name. And I walked in the office. It was filthy. It was like a rat hole. Marvel at this time period.
Wow.
It was it was really dirty. The carpets were dirty. Like everybody seemed sweaty and upset. So they rushed me out of the office and they took me to this bar and they're feeding me like lobster ravioli and beer. And they're saying things to me like, you must be so excited about drawing X-Men. Haven't you always wanted to draw X-Men? Isn't this like the dream of your lifetime? And even then I was a little more base than that, like a little bit kind of like, not really, like it's fine. It's okay. It's cool. But no, this is not, I'm not like Dan Fraga is somebody who would be like, yes, dude, I love it. Fucking awesome. I'm so excited to draw X-Men. I'm not like that. To me, this was a job and I wanted to do a good job, but I'm kind of like, why are you guys condescending to me and patronizing me? It's really weird. And they go, Ethan, what are your thoughts about Cyclops? And I go, he's got he shoots up. No. His personality. Like we were really concerned that like Grant Morrison was writing him to be kind of a dick. So
that's what I thought at the time. I thought Cyclops is kind of a dick when I was reading this at the time.
Well, that was their actual literal concern. So they they're like, we said, what is this? And Grant Morrison said, no, it's a story arc. It's a character arc where Scott's going to go through some stuff. He's going to come out the other side. Ethan, you should read what Grant sent us. And I was like, I don't care. No, you must. I literally did not care about anything they were talking about. And they were hitting me with so much energy and enthusiasm. And really, I was like, it's nice to meet you guys. Let's talk about the situation of not being able to handle the workload that I'm being given. I was concerned about. So they're like, come back to the office with us. Let's go. So they walked me back to the office. They literally have their hands on my shoulders and they push me down into the chair in front of the editor's computer. And he's over my shoulder. He's typing. You got to read this email. You got to read this email. They bring up one of Grant Morrison's emails. And it's like, hey, Mark, listen, yeah, I understand your concerns about Scott being an a-hole, but he's not. So don't worry, I got it. Anyway, on to Ethan Van Sciver. We had an agreement that I was going to get to pick who my fill-in artist was. This is now the third fill-in artist that you've saddled me with against my wishes.
Wow.
And he said, and this is not cool. This is not going to go down. I don't like his artwork. And if this continues, I don't see how this book is going to continue. So I'm reading this, I'm absolutely shell-shocked. Like, I'm sitting there going, like, so you guys were lying to me this whole time. You gave me this job without the writer, Grant Morrison, without his consent. And thank you for telling me I'm no good. I really appreciate that. And I remember I got up, I grabbed my bag. I'm like, I'm kind of like it felt like I got hit with a bag of rice. I was just like, I'll see you guys later. shit, and they're following me.
Why would they show you that too? I mean, were they gaslighting you, or what the hell was going on?
They followed me all the way to the elevator going, we didn't know how to tell you. I'm sorry. We didn't mean to hurt your feelings. We just didn't know how to tell you. I was like,
wow,
you assholes did this. So my entire vacation was ruined. I had to sit in the Virginia Beach, you know, like I don't know what I'm going to do. I just signed a 2-year exclusive contract to work with these people on a book that I'm not supposed to be on. And they're liars. They're lying to me. And I just didn't know. So I kind of, what ended up happening was I did hear from Vince Deegan, who is Frank Whiteley. We had become friends. And he said, Grant will not answer your emails. Whatever you want to say, send it to his girlfriend. And his girlfriend, here's her address, and she will forward it to him if she wants to. So I sat down and I wrote a letter to his girlfriend. And I just said,
their girlfriend. Please respect Grant.
Them,
pronouns.
they,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
At the time, he was pretty sure he was a man. At the time, things change. You know,
things change. Yeah, it's fluid.
So, cry more about it, baby, says Java. The end of it. Shut up, Java. So,
wow,
it was terrible. So I wrote to him. I said, listen, let me explain. My name's Ethan. I'm, 24 years old or whatever it was. I said, I didn't mean to. If I'm not supposed to be here, like, this is what happened to me. This is how I got this job, and I completely understand. Nobody told me, that this job wasn't for me. Nobody told me that. They encouraged me to take this job, and if I'm not supposed to be here, I will quit this gig. I will quit. Listen, it's more important that you get the artist that you want. So Grant writes me back this wonderful letter. I get a note back from Grant himself, and he just says, we Scotsmen can be cunts, he said. I was like, Jesus.
Wow.
He said, yeah. I was like, that's hard on an American's ears. But he kind of said, look, he's like, I'm sorry. He's like, I'm just really frustrated. These guys have lied to me over and over and over again. And he then lied to me kindly and said, I like your artwork. It's really good. I'm sorry I said that to you. Let's just do good comics together. Okay, let's just work together through this. It's a comic book. So couldn't have been better. Couldn't have been nicer. What a great guy. And
let's just work together. It's a comic book. You can't imagine. This is 2003, 4? Like
2002 or 3, yeah. 2 or 3.
We're 20 years later. There's not one person who's sitting in these industries at these offices who has this attitude. Let's just work together and get over our differences as a comic book. That's crazy, isn't it? Like, I mean, you can't just produce a comic book now. It all has to be like, they have to check your boxes for your politics, everything you've ever said. It's who your associations are. It's crazy.
Oh, I talked to Grant about being a conservative too back then, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
We actually got to be kind of friendly. Yeah, like, no, it wasn't like that. He had tremendous empathy. He didn't know me. I'm a young American kid that he'd never heard of that was currently ruining his comic book series. And because of the story that I told him, he had empathy enough for me to say, this isn't your fault. And so what? It doesn't matter. It's almost like your feelings matter more than something else or anything else. Let's just work together. And it was, I'll never forget that. Like, Grant Morrison is a crazy man or whatever. But he is, I will never say like bad things about him. He's very kind guy. So we worked together. We got to do a bunch of, I think I did 4 issues of New X-Men. I got to create things. He used my ideas. I created Glob Herman all by myself. He ran with that. Glob Herman, somebody sent me a nice little Hero Clicks. Marvel made a Hero Clicks of that character, which I think is
cool.
pretty neat. And the Cuckoos, the Stefford Cuckoos. What else did I create? A bunch of Beak, a bunch of great characters.
I remember Beak. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was a good time. I did a bunch of covers too. But Marvel, I never forgot those editors. And so with New X-Men 118, I said, I'm going to hide the word sex on every single page of this book. And and so I did, and I let the inker know, and I let the colorist know. I said, I'm playing a joke here. You guys don't get in the way of it. You know what I mean? Like, we can't tell the letterer because I don't know the letterer, but like, you guys, so I'm going to hide the word sex on every page of this book. And it was just my idea. I don't even know why I thought it was a good idea, but I was just like, fuck these guys. I'm going to do whatever I want. So I did, and then the book got published. It was the number one, because it's New X-Men. It was the number one book on the charts that week, that month. And then I leaked to Wizard Magazine. I said, hey, guys at Wizard, like, here are a couple examples. I hid the word sex on every page. Don't say it came from me. Say that you figured it out. You saw it. And Wizard ran with a little article. It's so kind of weird. We found 2 examples of sex hidden in the background of New X-Men 118. Are there more? Can fans take a look? Anyway, fans did. It kind of took off. It became a thing. There were very early YouTube videos about it, trying to figure out why this had happened. Wizard came to me and kind of said, "Do you want to comment on this?" I said, "There, people are seeing things. There's nothing there. It's ridiculous. A cloud is a cloud." Anyway, those 2 editors ended up getting fired. And I don't think it was entirely because of me, but that whole situation didn't really help. It made them seem like they were asleep at their job. And a lot of complaints were coming. The way that they sort of treated people, I think, was inexcusable. So they had to go bye-bye. They were replaced by a couple of other guys who were much, much better. But Marvel was doing weird stuff. They were making statues of my artwork and like crediting Frank Whiteley like for it. Like they wouldn't put my name on the box. They kept mirror reversing my covers for print and stuff. And they were just being dickheads. Yeah, they were just being dicks, like real passive aggressive. And what ended up happening was Joe Quesada called me into the office. I remember Joe was super fat at this time, probably the fattest he's ever been. Like,
and this is you saying this.
Yeah, like I'm saying this to you now, like 3 times as heavy as I am right now.
Wow.
Like, not even a joke. Like I remember looking at him and like his ass was spilling out over the back of his pants and everything. Big fat guy. He's behind his desk.
Did he have a gun? A gun?
Yes. Yeah. It was like hanging over the edge of the chair. And I remember as I was walking in the office, I could see over and behind him, like it was like a Hershey kiss kind of thing, and I could see his ass crack. Like, and I was
no.
I was like, that's not cool. And he says, "Sit down, Ethan." He goes, "Listen, your output just is not what it should be, is it?" And I said, "I'm trying, dude. I'm trying." I had kind of a bad attitude. So I've done, I think like 6 books. For you so far, and I did an issue of Wolverine and some other piece of shit called Wild Child. I said, I'm trying my best. I really am. I'm going as fast as I can. And he said, the problem is you're not going fast enough. I can't promote you. I can promote Igor Corday. He's getting work done. I can't promote you. No. It's just like, and he just said, I'm going to have to let you go. I'm going to let you out of your contract. And I was just like, thank you. And I just went right back to DC. Jeff Johns quit, I believe, right after that because he followed me over to Marvel and they kept us apart. Like they were
they put him on like Avengers, like right? For a
bit.
Like
we were gonna do some stuff together. We're like, this is great. So he quit. We came back over to DC. And we did some Hawkman, and then we just went right into Green Lantern Rebirth. It was like the best thing that could have happened.
And when that happened, like, I mean, I remember when Rebirth came out, just like, and DC Comics back then rarely got headline. It was always top of the charts was Marvel, X-Men, Marvel, Spider-Man, X-Men, right? And then DC, like a Batman book would make it up occasionally. But beyond that, like there was nothing. And then suddenly, like this book comes out and this Hal Jordan #1 Rebirth comes out and it's all anybody's talking about in the comic shop. It is like, exciting. I mean, they can't keep it in stock. It's you have to rush to the comic shop to get it before it's sold out. And they don't have books like that anymore. Nobody's rushing to the comic shop to get Tom King's Wonder Woman. Right. I mean, it's like, it's wild. But this is kind of the last throes. The 90s was that real rock star deal where you're getting ice sculptures, but this is like the last hurrah of like where comics really like took off in culture. I feel like when this was coming out. And
Jeff Johns and Dan DiDio. You interviewed Dan, and you did you feel that energy, that positive energy about comics that he had?
He loves comics. Like just loves it. And you don't feel that from these guys. Like, when I'm watching, any interviews of any of these modern people, it just seems like depressed, mentally ill people who are just, not very social and don't want to be promoting things. They think they should be, doing something else, and they just seem mad at life. It's a very different vibe. But you got to do this. And you got to be you got to be the guy here. I mean, you saved DC Comics, kind of. I mean, if you want to look at
Dan
it that
did.
way.
Dan DiDio did. Like he I was working so what actually happened was I said, "Oh, thank you for letting me go." I literally thanked Joe Quesada for firing me, which I think pissed him off. I was like, "Thank you," and I went right back to DC. I said, "Jeff, what do you got for me?"
Do you think that started because his animosity towards you these days is pretty off the charts, right? So like, do you think that kind of started bad blood that went on, or do you think that came later when, the criticism? It seems these guys can't take criticism. I mean, all the criticisms comes from you boy Zach just tearing their comics to shreds, proverbially. I do it literally, but he did it verbally, and that's I don't know. Do you think he just had this bad feeling about you back then, or now?
I don't know how Joe Quesada feels about me, if at all anything. I just know, like, he wasn't happy with my performance. I didn't produce enough work, to be fair. I can't hate on Joe Quesada because he gave me like this opportunity. But every time he gave me an opportunity, it was tinged with something awful. Like, like, I'm going to let you work at Marvel Knights, but I'm going to steal your idea from you. It's like, okay, that's great. I'm going to let you work at Marvel on New X-Men with Grant Morrison, but I'm going to put you in an incredibly awkward position where, you're unwelcome by the writer. I'm going to have editors that lie to you, and then I'm going to kind of gaslight you and steal from you as you go along here. We're gonna make your first set of statues, because I did this X-Men piece where they're all standing there. They're busts, I think, kind of, and they're all in an X formation. And they said those would make great bust statues, and they started making. I think they made 3 of them, and the first 2 were credited to Frank Quitely. They said based on designs by Frank Quitely. But they were my drawings. And I said, and I called him, I said, boy, I'd really like to send one of these to my mom. It's like the first statue that's ever been made of my work. But it says Frank Quitely. Where's my name? And they said, the designs were by Frank Quitely. I said, what do you mean the designs? Like the costumes they're wearing. I said, that's some bullshit. So are you telling me every time you put out a Spider-Man statue, it says designed by Steve Ditko? Like, that's bullshit. Like it's
they definitely don't. Yeah.
Right. It's the artist. Like, you took my artwork and you sculpted from it. It should say designed by Ethan Van Sciver. And so then passive aggressively, they did a 3rd one, and it said designed by Frank Quitely with artwork by Ethan Van Sciver, real small underneath it. I was like, you guys are fucking assholes. So yeah, it was really awful. Like, and so like
way different experience at DC. It's like the opposite for you. You just felt
It just felt so great. Like, first of all, DC's offices were immaculate. They're like a dentist's office in there. They're very clean, and people they smile at you, and nobody's afraid about losing their job. And it's just a nicer environment. You could kind of count on it to be more professional, less hostile, more professional. So, they gave me a Hawkman book, and then Joey Cavalieri had this Annie Nocenti script in his desk. He's like, do you want to draw this Batman Catwoman script? We don't really know what we're going to do with it. And I said, yeah, I'll do that. So I did that. And while I was working on it, Dan DiDio was hired. And he was going to be I knew him because he was writing Superboy with Jimmy Palmiotti. And he had come over from Mainframe, where I knew him because at Mainframe Entertainment, where he was making Beast Wars, they had just licensed Cyberfrog. So they were going to do a Cyberfrog animated show. And that's where I met Dan DiDio at his previous job. So suddenly he's over here in comics. And this is a weird coincidence. Anyway, I was at this show in New York City Comic Con where Dan was walking around being Dan DiDio. And he stopped by my table where I had a photocopy booklet of the work so far on Batman Catwoman Trail of a Gun. And he looked at it. He's like paging through it, and like he's really impressed by it. And he goes, it was like a Sunday, and he goes, can you, and I lived in Florida at the time. He goes, can you be here? Can you stop by the office on Monday morning for a meeting? And I was flying out, Sunday night. I said, yes. I had to change my ticket and everything. So I stayed an extra day, and I went to see Dan. And this is where I got Dan in a little trouble here retelling this story. I was telling this story to my audience the other day. So Dan's like, I got a project for you. And I go, what? And he goes, shut the door. This is secret. He goes, check this out. We're doing this thing with, who was the writer of Identity Crisis? I can't remember his name now.
Brad Metzler.
Brad Meltzer.
Yeah.
He goes, so we got Brad Meltzer, and he's writing a story. He's going to write an epic story that's going to take, how DC's Silver Age is so fun and so optimistic and silly. He's going to drag it into hell. He's like, check this out, Ethan. We're going to rape Sue Dibney. And I was like, okay. He's like, I don't want to draw it. Yeah, he was excited about it too. He was just like, because it would seem like he was excited about it the way Alfred Hitchcock would be excited about, we're gonna murder the guy's wife. You know what I mean? It's a crime. You know what I mean? It's the crime that the story's based on. It wasn't like he was like, I'm excited about the concept of rape. I
reread that event book recently too. It's really uncomfortable the whole way through. I mean, it makes you feel bad. Yeah.
It wouldn't work like now. It was kind of a downer, but and I go, what? And he's just like, yeah. He's like, trust me, Ethan, it's going to be big. And I said, wow. So anyway, I went home and I had to tell my wife, I was like, I guess I'm going to rape Sue Dibney for DC Comics. Because what the hell? But it ended up like Rags Morales got that job. And, Dan called me and said, we're going to move you off of that. I don't think you're right for that. We're going to bring back Hal Jordan. And Jeff Johns is going to write it. We've been working with Jeff Johns. Dan DiDio deserves a lot of credit. Dan DiDio, Pete Tomasi, Jeff Johns got together at San Diego Comic-Con. They just got in a room and they just stayed there and hammered out how to fix the disaster. I mean, Ron Mars, he left.
I liked that book, Ethan. I liked it.
Did you? A lot of people did. It sold really well, but he basically made it so that it would be impossible for Hal Jordan to become a hero again. Like he was a villain, he was a murderer and a traitor and all these things. So, Jeff and Dan and Pete Tomasi all got in the room and just fixed it. They just fixed it. And they gave it to me to do. It was absolutely tremendous. Amazing. And probably the happiest I've ever been in comics was at that moment. Working on this book where Jeff created this dark mystery around the return of Hal Jordan. Who was he, a ghost? Like, who's Spectre? What is Parallax? And, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Fun. And everybody wanted to know.
Yeah. All right. I try to keep these an hour, which I know the audience is not going to like. And I've actually got a meeting in like 20 minutes. So I do have to go. So I'm going to read the super chats. And then we're going to have to cover the, we're gonna have to do this again, maybe in a month or two, and talk about the whole your boy Zach craze, how that led to somebody throwing a brick through a storefront just because they wanted to harass you. Do you remember this? I mean, nobody talks about this anymore. Yeah. And then how you then became the face of rebellion against all the crap that's happening in the comic book industry these days, because that's that time period was so fresh, and it was fresh and exciting in a lot of ways as when you were going to the comic shops excited about Hal Jordan's return, right? And if you remember this, guys in the chat, if you were there, we're all rebelling against this, and we're having fun on YouTube. We're just enjoying ourselves. We're all going to make our own comics and just F these corporate brands. I mean, gosh, and we're still here and we're still having fun, but that's another story. We'll have to do it another time. Thank you, Janella, for becoming a channel member. Travis Perrick says, one woman you shouldn't trust JDA is Gail Simone. Thank you for the $2. My good friend Gail Simone would never betray me. So we'll see what happens. I made a video about her this morning because she was going off on problems in the comic industry, and she's right. I'm going to write it up for Bounding Into Comics, so we'll see how fast she disavows me. You want to take bets on this? Timmy Mello, thank you for the $5 super chat. Is there a comic artist Pro Seeker's autobiography book coming? His backstory stuff on the industry is always fascinating, the good and the bad. Yeah, those are always fun books to read. I like those. You should do that at some point.
I don't think anybody would read it. So yeah,
I would read
so
it.
Obscure, you know.
I just read Jack C. Harris's biography on working at DC Comic. I'll read yours. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wilberforce Wooster, thank you for the $5 super chat. Question for Ethan. Is Joe Bennett an A-list artist, or rather, as Mike S. Miller said, a Brazilian studio hack? Throwing shade. If you don't know, Mike Miller is going at Ripa on Twitter, saying that he's hiring hack Brazilian studio artists, and there's been some back and forth there.
Joe's really good. He's way better than Mike. Way better than Mike. So, I mean, that's just... I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't call Joe Bennett an A-lister. I'd say he's a B-lister, but Mike is a D-lister. And, you know, so there you go.
Wow. Shots fired on as I'm about to release a book with Mike. Thanks, Ethan. I appreciate it.
Oh, sorry.
Squibs, thank you for the $1.99. Hail JDA and EVS, can't wait for part 2. Yeah, it'll have to be after I get back from El Salvador sometime. This was a lot of fun. So good stories. Appreciate it.
I wasn't watching at the time. I would have been much briefer. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. I it sounded really good, and I didn't realize that that you'd have like such deep stories about Joe Quesada stealing your work. So yes,
that's true.
So thanks for coming on, and thank you guys for being here, chat. We will be back Thursday with Vox Day. Don't tell anybody because we'll get canceled.